Good afternoon, guys. My name is Jaden Sanchez,
And I'm Sharon Paek.
and we would like to welcome you guys to our presentation today on stopping the stigma, understanding mental illness. Right, so before we begin, we just want to give you guys an important disclaimer, and that the information presented is based on research conducted by us, the presenters. However, we encourage everyone to participate in the discussion as well as to do your own research, just to be informed. And now we'll go over a brief overview about what we'll go over in this presentation. So first, of course, we will cover what is mental illness and related terms as well. We will cover stigma and discrimination behind mental illness or surrounding mental illness. As well, we'll give you tips, resources, and contacts that will help you guys fight or stop the stigma against mental illness. And of course, we have a guest speaker today, Ms. Shannon Williams. And we have an activity at the end, so make sure you guys take notes and pay attention. And you guys help yourself to some questions in the back if you want. Okay. So now we can start off with some key terms to know. The first, of course, is mental illness. It is a health condition involving changes in thinking, emotion, and behavior. And then we have stigma, when one person sees another person in a negative light due to their mental challenges. And then we have discrimination, when a person treats someone else in a negative way because of their mental challenges. Now, these two definitions may sound similar, but in terms of stigma, you may not necessarily treat a person badly because they're mentally challenged, but you see them in that light. You see them as someone to avoid, But in discrimination, you're actively involved in treating that person differently from how you would treat another person. And now we like to go over some of the most common mental illnesses there are around. And these are mostly anxiety and depressive disorders. And here are examples of these disorders. You have anxiety disorders, of course. A person with this disorder responds to certain objects or situations with feelings of fear or dread, and physical signs include rapid heartbeats and sweating. Now, I've personally experienced something like this. This can induce a panic attack or an anxiety attack, right? You feel very pressured, you feel very dizzy, your heart starts beating fast, you feel like the whole world is going to come crashing down on you recently. And then we have mood disorders. So someone with the mood disorder can experience extreme fluctuations in moods. It can go from a person can go from extremely happy and joyful to downright depressive and distraught. And of course, bipolar disorder, I know some of you have heard that term used before. Bipolar disorder falls under this category. Now about mood disorders. A person with a mood disorder, it can be very hard for them to socialize, in an environment like this. And it's not their fault. It's just that a person deals with these challenges. So please try and understand them. And then we have psychotic disorders. A person's awareness and thought processes are very distorted. And of course, schizophrenia falls under this category. And then we have other forms of illness, such as social anxiety. I know some of us have experienced that sort of anxiety before, right? You feel like you're being watched, being judged by members of society, and this falls under an anxiety disorder. And then you have schizophrenia, going back to what we talked about. So a chronic brain disorder that can abnormally alter a person's reality. So a person with schizophrenia, their minds are not really able to tell the difference between reality and what is going on in their mind. Therefore, it can be hard for them sometimes. And again, it's not their fault. They are mentally challenged. It's something that a person must deal with. So please try and understand them as you can. And then we have post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. So a person with PTSD has experienced a shocking or terrifying event. It can cause things such as nightmares and flashbacks. And I think a good example, well, I wouldn't say technically good example, but a common example is soldiers, right? Especially soldiers who've been to combat. They may have seen things that they wouldn't want others to see. They may have seen their friend get shot, may have seen another getting blown up by a landmine. They might have cradled their friend as they lay dying in their arms. And that comes back to haunt them. Every night when they go to bed, when they turn out the light, those images replay over and over again. And that can severely affect a person's mental state. And then here we have eating disorders. It is defined by abnormal eating habits that can affect a person's mental or physical health. And of course, you know, with eating disorders, right, maybe so a person may be taking in too much food or too little food, or sometimes their preference of food may not be exactly the best, you know. And now we have the terms and languages to avoid. So in order to create an inclusive environment for people who may have these challenges, you must avoid using terms that insult or ostracize a person that is mentally challenged. Some terms to avoid include mentally ill person, or psychotic, disturbed, crazy, or mad. Retarded, for example. That word has been used liberally several times. People have used that as sort of an insult. Oh, shut up, retard. Don't be retarded, bro. But it's not exactly the best word to use. And then you have insane and mentally disabled. Now, with mentally disabled, right, it may seem like a harmless, not really derogatory word. However, used in context, you're sort of insinuating that a person who is mentally disabled is unable to function due to the fact that they're disabled, basically, which of course we know is not true. A mentally challenged person is able to function just in their own way. Then we have the word derelicts. Now this word, it's less common than other words used. However, when used in the context of a noun, derelicts usually mean a person who has been abandoned by society. And that could mean, you know, a mentally challenged person, right? They're seen as someone to avoid, someone to stay away from, someone not to interact with, and left better off on their own, which of course is not true.
Okay, so with every action, there are consequences. So I'll be talking about the harmful effects of stigma and discrimination. So even us as students, we get burnout, right? Like it's exam week, you know, let's say you have like our project PROA navigators, we have work, and then we have school, and then we have family. And then if you're in a relationship, you have relationships. But people who suffer from mental illnesses, they have that on top of that as well. And it's not something like just on the side that's like bothering them. It's like their main focus. They are a victim. So it's like life gives you lemons on lemons on lemons, but no cake. Like they don't give you cake. Reluctance, the person might be reluctant to asking for help. They might have trouble opening up, or even sharing their concerns either with friends or family. Self-doubt, they might have these thoughts like, can I even beat my mental illness? Or will I even be able to live a normal, you know, in a society's view, life? Or what if my friends hate me? Like they want to open up, but then they're scared like their friends might be like, oh, I don't want to deal with you, or, you know? So continuing, shame. A person might have feelings of shame due to their mental illnesses, and they might think they're not worthy of help. Bullying. A person may be bullied because they don't act the specific or the same way we do or society does. And because of all of these, they might, you know, shut themselves out. They don't want to go out. They don't want to be pointed at. They don't want to be whispered about, you know, so they decide to just have fewer social interactions and be alone in their room. So dealing with stigma, for a person who's suffering from mental illness, they should socialize, but not socialize like, you know, go up to a random stranger and talk to them. It could just be like, you know, asking your friends or our family, being like, oh, how are you? You know, I'm feeling this and that, or school is really hard right now, or even like Project PROA. You can always come here and we have mentors and tutors who's always down to talk to you. We're always open. We also have our administrators, Kiana and Mali. So taking control, we're in control of our minds, and we can always take small steps. So we may seem like our mental illness is, taking control of our lives, but, it's not that. You can go at your own pace. One day you can be like, if you feel like an anxiety attack is coming, then you can just, hold on to something. And then the next time you start thinking about something else and start having like deep breaths, go at your own pace. It doesn't have to be like anxiety or mental illnesses don't go away like that, like all of our problems. And if the person may feel like they're comfortable enough and they're ready to open up, they can seek necessary treatment. Fighting the stigma. So for us who have, loved ones who are suffering from mental illnesses, we can educate ourselves, do our own research, attend presentations like this one, like you guys are doing right now, which is so good. Read more about how we can help our loved ones with a mental illness. And we can help them develop a support system. So I put my support system because I didn't realize that I was going through a mental illness or I had it until later. And these two, this is my older brother, that's my younger brother. They helped me kind of fight it. They don't know they're my support system though. They don't know that I was going through it. I didn't know either, but they have been a lot of help. And I think developing a support system can help you stay positive. This goes back to not letting our mental illness control us. So if you think like all of this seems like repetitive, it's because they're all related to each other. They're all connected. So self-diagnosis. Do you guys know what self-diagnosis is? Okay, a lot of head nodding. Okay, so how many of you think it's a good thing? And you can only raise your hand once. So think carefully. No one, like zero. Okay, brave. So we have like a couple. Okay, another brave one. Okay, how many of you think it's bad? Okay, some of you didn't raise your hands. So how many of you think it's both? You can't raise your hand. I saw you. You can't raise your hand. Nah, you said positive. Okay, you can't raise your hand either. No, I said you can only raise your hand once. That's why I said use it carefully. I said use it carefully. We gave a warning. You guys didn't listen. Okay, so what is it? It's the process of diagnosing of a medical condition in yourself. So you have a headache. And then you look it up online and it says you have brain tumor. You're like, oh my God, I have brain tumor. I'm gonna die. So there is a positive side and a bad side. The positive side is, a long time ago, even like a few years ago back, talking about mental health was taboo. Like they're like, oh, why are you talking about that? You can't talk about that here, But now, like especially with social media, we see a lot of people talking about it, helping people how to treat it, like little ways to treat it. And it's a step towards the direction of acknowledging and getting help. And professionals recommend working alongside them because, of course, it can get dangerous. Let's say you look up having, what's a good example? Shout something out. Eating, okay, but what? You have to have a symptom to diagnose yourself. Let's say, okay, you lose appetite. And then you look it up and they're like, you have anorexia. And then so you would go to all these like, sites to treat it. And then you get, you try to cure yourself with like your diet, over-the-counter medications or other methods. And that's not safe because you don't know what your body can take. That's why the doctors and nurses do blood work. They ask for your diet. They ask very, very, very specific questions because like medications work for specific people, but it might not work for you and it can actually be more harmful.
Oh, and one more thing, guys, in relation to this, I know that there tends to be sometimes a tendency to experiment with drugs or alcohol to quote unquote numb the pain. That really only damages you further, both physically and mentally. So don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs, kids. Okay, so for tips for friends and family, be a good listener. So when I was like having not depressive episodes, but when I was feeling like really, really bad, like really bad days, I would text my brother and I'd be like, hey, can we talk? And he'd say yes. And I would talk for like literally hours, like just talking about my problems, what's on my mind, what's bothering me. And he just listened. That's all he does. And that would make me like, he didn't have to say anything. He would just like nod his head and that's fine. And I would feel so much better. And if you don't know what to do, when my brother calls me, I'm always kind of lost. So I ask if he's like, oh, I'm really stressed right now, or I feel really lonely or something like that. Then I would say, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to listen? Do you want me to give a distraction? Do you want me to give you validation? Like, what do you want me to do? And once he tells me what he wants or what he needs at that time, I would accommodate to that and show them you care. Like my brother would text me out of the blue being like, I'm proud of you. And then it's waterfalls falling out of my eyes. And he doesn't know that. He doesn't know it's doing that to me, but it does. So you don't know, like, I'm proud of you. Is that 4 words or 5? Because I am. I can see everyone's hands like coming out like, So you don't know, like 5 words. 5 little words could mean so much to a person. And our guest speaker, the Miss Beautiful, Beautiful, Beautiful Shannon Williams. She got her master's degree in mental health counseling. She is working on her PhD right now in international psychology. And currently she is working as a licensed mental health counselor for the suicide prevention and healthy transitions programs for CDC. So if everyone could give a round of applause. You can bring your chair too if you want.
No, that's okay. I'll stand. That's okay. Because I'm short, so you probably won't see me. If I am, okay, where should I stand?
Right there is fine.
Okay. All right. Wow, what a great presentation. I was so impressed. Thank you for that and bringing awareness to your community. That is amazing. So my understanding is that I've been asked to talk a little bit about stigma and mental health and kind of my background and how I got, kind of how I decided to get into the field. Okay. So, the one thing that I thought was really great that you talked about was kind of asking that question, self-diagnosis, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And you said, I kind of didn't raise my hand because I said it's both. It's both. It's both good and bad. And the reason for that has to do with stigma and awareness, right? So just like with any health issue, and I think this is where the stigma comes in when we talk about mental health, is that in general, we tend to see mental health as one area of healthcare and everything below the neck as another, when in reality, it's very interconnected, right? And so as human beings, we're one whole body. We're not head and body, we're both. And that just as if you would not ignore or stigmatize somebody who maybe, if I broke my wrist, I came in here with a cast, nobody would say, oh, she let me stay away from her because, that's not cool. She has a broken wrist, right? The same thing goes for mental health. It's a dysfunction of the brain. And just like if I broke my wrist, my bones didn't work right, the same thing goes for the brain. And so what I think is really good about this idea of self-diagnosis is that the educational piece of that, right? So for somebody to be able to say, I'm going to use this as my example today, break my wrist, if I fall down and it really hurts and my hand is swollen, I can't move my hand, right? I'm going to self-diagnose initially and say, I think I broke my wrist, because those are the symptoms that I have heard mean a broken wrist. And so therefore, then I'm going to take the next step and say, let me go and get an x-ray and let me go to the emergency room and figure out what's going on. And the same thing needs to happen with mental health. We need to be aware of the symptoms of mental health and be aware of them within ourselves so that we can seek out appropriate help, right? Because no one should have to be alone in dealing with those symptoms. And no one should be made to feel that it's somehow their fault or that they, like you guys talked about, that they're ostracized, because it is not something that you can control. And it is not something that you should be afraid to seek out help, So when we look at it from that aspect, I think that helps a lot. So when we're talking, if you want to talk to people about mental health, that's a really good way to approach it. And I do that a lot in my own work when somebody feels like maybe ashamed or embarrassed to be seeking out help. And I say, if you had pneumonia, would you be afraid or ashamed to go seek help? Oh, no, no, no. Well, the same thing for mental health, right? It's a healthcare issue. And there's nothing wrong with getting sick. And every single one of us on this planet will struggle with some sort of mental health issue at some point in time in your life, because it's a big spectrum, right? All the way from just normal kind of everyday stresses to something as serious as like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, right? We don't get through life without being ill, whether that be in the brain or the body, and probably both, right? Sometimes we get depressed, sometimes we get the flu. It just happens. So I received my master's degree from Capella University, and I graduated in 2014. So Capella is a university based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And why I chose that university is because I was at the time a single mom of 2 girls, because my husband at the time was overseas fighting in Iraq. And I lived in rural Wisconsin and didn't have very many options for seeking out a graduate program. And I chose to go into mental health counseling because I realized after taking my first psychology class in undergrad, so surprisingly, I actually started in my undergrad program to be a vet. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I really loved animals. I wanted to go into big animal medicine. I wanted to work specifically with, I was going to specifically get a degree in zoology and work. I wanted to work in the zoo and do some field research. And I took my first abnormal psych class when I was getting my bachelor's degree, and I really fell in love. And I had never had a class that was just so easy. Like I got a 99% or something crazy like that. And I barely studied because it just my brain just soaked it up, and I just loved it. And then I took anatomy and physiology class, because when you are going into pre-vet, you are a biology major. And so anatomy and physiology is one of the classes to take. And the unit on the brain, again, I was just nerding out, just completely just loving it. And so that really, I really chose to kind of change my trajectory. And I kind of took a break. I had my family. And so then when it was time to kind of decide, all right, what do I want to do with my life? This is what I chose. And I'm really, really happy I did, because I love being a therapist. I think it's the most amazing work. I get to help my community every single day, right? And I absolutely adore it. Another big focus of the work that I've chosen to do is to focus on culture in the field of psychology, and how, unfortunately, the field of psychology has historically been racist and has been framed it's been framed within colonization and Western medicine, and that does not fit most of the world, right? And so a lot of the places that I have worked and done therapy have been very, very diverse, and they have been places where I've worked with people from all over the world. I worked with a lot of people who were refugees and first and second generation immigrants, English as second language. And I was running into a lot of clients who said, a big part of why I have not sought out services has to do with the cultural aspects of who I am. And that has been largely ignored in the field. And so I decided that, the way I practice was going to really honor that. And so I knew that I wanted to pursue my PhD. And the Chicago School, and I should have sent that information, the actual schools I'm going to. So my PhD, I'm working with the Chicago School of Psychology, professional psychology. And that is out of Chicago. And they have both in-person programs, like on the ground programs, as well as hybrid online programs. So I started out in person. I am now finishing my dissertation through their distance education program. And they are the only program I think at all that have international psychology as an option. And my degree is also, I'm taking the trauma track. And the other reason for that is that the field has evolved to the point. So you remember how I talked about mental health is a healthcare issue, right? That's in the brain. Well, we know that fully now, okay? And so if you were to, if I could sit up here and give you a history lesson on psychology, it would talk about where we used to see it as very behavioral or as having a lot to do with kind of like external influences, or, you have to talk it through. Well, no, we know now that a lot of the reason why the brain struggles is trauma. And trauma works in the brain in a very specific way that causes these symptoms of mental health disorders. And so I have chosen to focus that way because that's what the science has told us. And we know that, and more, the field is giving us this information that there are specific brain changes that happen when we go through trauma, and that we have tools in the field that can actually heal that and change the brain so that we can go through our life and say, hey, that's in the past. I'm all right. I can move forward. And I think that's very, very exciting. And so that's why I've chosen the degrees that I've chosen. And I am really enjoying that a lot. And so my dissertation, so for any of you who aren't aware, when you get a PhD, you have to write a really big paper, like 100-page they call it dissertation. And you choose a field of research that you're going to study. And so I chose, and since it's psychology, right? So you choose something under the umbrella of psychology, international psychology. And my study is in the Caribbean. So I will be focusing on Black Caribbean women and postpartum depression. So, and that is depression during and after pregnancy. And that's a really under-researched field. And that's something that really impacts multiple generations, because when a mom is not healthy, then it impacts how she bonds with her baby. And then the baby grows up with attachment issues, and then that impacts how they function as an adult, and then their parenting, right? And then you kind of can see it goes on and on. So I think that's really important. Yeah, so I've been working, I just got here in March to Saipan. I love it. I'm enjoying my work so much. And I am working as a licensed mental health counselor for ChST, as it says here. And I have a dual role as the clinical lead for both the suicide prevention and the healthy transitions programs. So I'm able to do therapy and kind of tag team both of those programs. And the suicide, just for your knowledge base, our suicide prevention program, they call it GLS. And so that is free to the entire community, that if somebody is struggling with suicidal ideation, if a loved one is struggling with suicidal ideation, you can call us and we will do an assessment and provide care and give appropriate referral. And then the healthy transitions program is for those, and maybe some of you already know what I'm talking about, so you can stop me if I'm giving you information I already know. So that is ages 16 to 25, and that is more direct services and also wraparound services. And what that means basically is like, you're going to have a team of people that will help you, have a therapist and a wraparound coordinator and your psychiatric provider, and everybody is there to support you in healing and making sure that you get the appropriate care. So those are two really, really wonderful programs, and I'm excited to be a part of. So yeah, so that's me. That's what I've done. That's what I'm doing. I suppose questions, right? I need to, yeah, question and answer sort of thing. So questions for me. Don't everybody raise your hands at once. No. Any questions? Yep.
How did you find out about Saipan?
So actually my mom lives here.
Oh.
So I came to join her. I miss my mom, so here I am. That's okay. No, that's okay. It was great. I thought when I got out of that program, I realized that I was much better prepared than a lot of my colleagues directly after grad school. And then Capella's nice because it's really like student focused. You know, some universities are more like faculty focused, which is good for the faculty, but as students, you know, so they're really, I mean, that's the plus and minus of a private versus, so like a public or profit versus nonprofit, you know, and there's a lot of arguments for both. What I kind of like about a for-profit college, and quite frankly, at the end of the day, you're probably spending around the same amount of money, unless you go to certain programs which are really cheap. But even a lot of the public or nonprofit schools, you're spending, I mean, gosh, $40,000 a year for some, right? What I like about a for-profit program is because they're for profit and you're the consumer, which is right or wrong, I don't know. Right, they're going to be like, how can we help you? How can we make your experience good? And then and also our commencement was pretty cool. So we had like, oh God, I can't remember his name, but he was he's like some famous actor, and he came, right, like if I was at some nonprofit, it would just been like the dean of, faculty or something. So he gave this amazing speech, and it was like this big party, and that was pretty cool. I said, oh my gosh, my money at least was like put to something fun, right? So I don't know. I mean, there's pluses and minuses, but I liked the education I got, and I like that Capella, it was geared towards military families. So that was another reason how I got connected with them as a military wife. So they really focus on military families and also international students. They're really big on. So I met people from all over the world, which was pretty cool. My professors were from all over the world. So I met some interesting people.
Yeah.
I know like psychology have so much theory, right? What else do you like your favorite topic in the psychology?
Oh, in psychology, yes. Okay. So I really like adolescents. I really like working with adolescents. And so I mentioned I'm a big brain nerd. And so I'm big on developmental psychology. And I really like working with adolescents because from the ages of 13 to 22, that is one of the most critical times for brain development and becoming an adult. And so people, we all complain. I have adolescents as a mom, and we complain, they're cranky and they're combative, and they want to sleep and don't want to do their work and don't follow the rules. Well, the reason for that is your brain is growing so rapidly, and it's a really, really interesting time of life, and there's so much going on. The only thing that compares to that is like 0 to 3. So when you think about a baby and how quickly they grow from a little newborn all the way to like a 3-year-old, and how rapid that growth is, and all the changes that are happening. Well, the same thing is happening in adolescence, but you can kind of see the body, right? Depending, you can grow taller, but really up in here, the brain, and that's where we become adults, right? So before the age of 13, we have like no development right here in our prefrontal cortex. And that's what makes us grown-ups. And so, your parents ever yell at you before you're 25 about, oh, why are you so impulsive? Oh, why did you make this decision? You just say, well, my brain's not done growing. I don't know. And that's true. And so by the time we're 25, then we have all of our brain development. And so it's a really, really interesting phase of life. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Is therapy for everyone?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Be more specific with that question, though.
Okay, so per se, a person wants to take therapy, but they don't like the idea of someone helping them mentally, but you have to pay for it. So what can you do to convince that person to feel more comfortable with the idea?
So, I think I would probably say to that person, what are your goals, right? So depending on what their goal, we can talk about that and why and how therapy can be effective for those goals. So if the goal is, maybe like I'm just having a hard time managing my emotions, I get angry really easily or irritated really easy. There's a lot to therapy. And so I think it's education, right? You talk about, well, here's what therapy can do to help you with that, right? And why it's okay. And also, right, what's the topic of the day is stigma. And I would probably, in my mind, I would say, okay, that person probably has really stigmatized mental health care, and that there's probably maybe some feelings of embarrassment or shame or something, and that it's nothing to be ashamed of, and that everyone needs help in their life sometimes. And that, and the person that you're working with, they're not there to tell you what to do. They're there to give you the tools to help you be the best you, right? And that's a really powerful thing to go through. And that, and there's no shame in that. Yeah. Anyone else?
I was asked how many
Are there, how many mental health counselors do you guys have at CDC or therapists?
Yeah, we're really low capacity, so it's just, let me see, 3 at wellness, 3. I think there's 5 of us. That's it. Yeah,
For the whole CNMI at that program?
yeah, yeah. So if anybody's interested in the field, and that's everywhere in the world. There's just never enough mental health providers. And stigma has a lot to do with that. And, kind of like we said, like even 5 years ago, there was so much stigma. And I think that, your generation is the one that's changing that you're making it okay to talk about. You're making it okay to get help if you need it, so that's great.
Yeah, Gen Z.
Are we all Gen Z? We
Right,
are
yeah.
Gen Z, right? Okay.
Wait, when is the end of Gen Z? Which year is Gen Z?
I don't even know.
Millennial.
I mean, we're pretty great too, us millennials. Any other questions about anything? No? Okay. Yes.
Oh my God, I've been on. As an association, deal with a lot of burnout. And it's easy to get help with that and find.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last end of your question.
And we go to the strategies for managing it, stuff like that.
Yes,
and
yes,
just someone to talk to.
yes,
Is your office?
yes,
And
absolutely,
for that kind of-
absolutely. So really, the for you, well, because you guys are you for under 25, yeah, that'll be healthy transitions. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Come on, please. Yeah. Yeah, and nursing, right? Nursing is such an important field, but it's so stressful. And I think you're seeing that as a student, really how much, and so remember how I said I'm trauma focused, right? And trauma is a big side effect of being in the healthcare field at all, like doctor, nursing, therapist, whatever, right? Because you see and hear things that are pretty scary. And so I think if there's, and police officers and any of those first responders, of course, but we know about that. They talk about police officers and military. They don't talk about healthcare workers, right? And the things that you're seeing, you're saving people's lives, you're full of blood. Like, I mean, especially in the pandemic, what you guys are dealing with, and so you will be able to help those, if that's the career path you've chosen as a helping field. If you take care of yourself, you're going to have more to give to help others. And we have to remember that, right? That self-care is important for everyone, but especially if you're in those helping fields, big time. And that you're not stronger than anybody, right? Stigma. We're strong people as helpers, but we're human. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, so I know we talked about like the effects of like self-diagnosing. And so like what if we think that we have like some sort of mental illness? Is there any resources available on the CNMI where we could possibly like get diagnosed?
Yes, so that would, so there's 2 places probably would be best. It would be, of course, to reach out to ChST or psychiatry, right? So in the hospital, like you can go through psychiatrist, especially if symptoms are really severe, and you're like, I probably need medicine. They will give you appropriate diagnosis too, and then if you're like looking for just self resources, like information, SAMHSA, like their website is always really good. They have so much on there. The APA, American Psychological Association, they have tons of information. There's nothing wrong with learning about yourself and learning about things, oh, maybe I'm struggling with depression. The problem with self-diagnosis comes in when we stop there, right? And we say, oh yeah, I know I have depression, so let me just, fix it myself. No, right? That's if you think that's what you're dealing with, then you need to get appropriate help. Yeah. Anyone else? Questions? We're good? Okay. Well, thanks for having me, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
Okay. So these are some links that we put up for helpful information to look into. Wow, this is really far away. Anyway, So we also put like helpful contacts. We're here, Project PROA, we have mentoring, we have 6 mentors. We're located right here where you guys are standing. For Zoom participants, we're located in Building O, State of Mind Archives. We have our counseling and career staff. There was one more person that we were supposed to add, but she's not here. Oh, no, okay, sorry. But we will fix up the presentation and probably post it online, I think. Yeah, so we have our counselors and then we also have the CHCC CDC department.
Hello, thanks for watching our YouTube video. For more informational videos like these, subscribe to our NMC YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share this video. Thank you and see you on the next video.